Welcome to the next episode of the Cannabis Review. I'm delighted to be joined on this episode by Beau Whitney, who's the founder of Whitney Economics. How are you keeping today, Beau?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted to have you on the show, mate. Thank you very much for joining me. I basically wanted to give everybody a chance to give an overview of the jobs report you recently did there with Leafly at the start of the year. Can you basically maybe give everybody a quick little overview of how long the report took and the partnership that you guys have had at Leafly since 2019?
Yeah. So previously to 2019, I had been doing job reports mainly on the Oregon market and then a little bit on the U.S. market. Leafly was being asked to opine on the job potential in the job market, and there wasn't really any data out there. So at one point, Bruce Barcott from Leafly reached out to me, and we started collaborating. And so we've for the last 3 years now, we've published a report in the February timeframe, and it covers the previous year's employment. So yeah, it's been a great partnership. They've got a great team there at Leafly, and I provided some insights, and now we meet monthly and talk about what's going on in the United States market, and keeps all the data fresh, and like of my team's really strong as well. So it's been a great partnership.
Yeah, I think the key to any industry is the collection of data and the explanation of that data and the outsourcing of that data to different companies to be able to utilize. Can you tell me some of the stats I hear from the report are pretty crazy that I have to admit. So cannabis in 2021 was the most prolific job creator in the US. Is this correct?
Yeah, there was a job created in the cannabis space once every 2 minutes. And so, and you asked about how long this takes. It takes quite a while. So we begin production of this and writing and research, and we do it throughout the year, but we really concentrated in the fourth quarter of each year. And then we do the final analysis at the end of the year. And then we publish it, like I said, in February. But some of the numbers were stunning. Like there's more cannabis related jobs in the United States than there are plumbers or bank tellers. And the job creation, like I said, once every 2 minutes, that's 280 a day. That's pretty significant, and it's one of the fastest growing sectors in the United States from an employment perspective.
Yeah, no, it is incredible to see. As you said, 280 jobs a day, a 33% increase from the year previous. Do you expect the gains to be in double digits like that for the industry over the coming years? I'm actually over to New York myself on Thursday to go to New Jersey to visit a couple of newly open facilities. So I can only imagine what the Eastern Seaboard opening up is going to do to the industry.
Yeah, a lot of the growth, that's very insightful. A lot of the growth comes from the new emerging states that are just deploying their cannabis programs. And it takes a while for each one of these programs to capture the illicit consumer and convert them into the legal market. And and it takes several years, almost half a decade, in order to get full maximum potential. Now, some of the West Coast states in the United States have already captured a majority of the demand and converted that over into the legal space. But then where the action is now is in these newly deploying states like New York, New Jersey, and elsewhere.
Yeah, well, I'm a firm believer that New York has a pretty close relationship to Europe just for the amount of people who travel there just on tourism, that I can guarantee your report is going to cover cannabis tourism when it comes to New York much more prevalently than would on the let's say the eastern seaboard or the western seaboard, because generally a lot of European people aren't going to go visit the western seaboard for tourism, whereas New York for a weekend is a huge thing with Irish people, with UK people. So I think that's going to drive the industry. The fact that I'm going over on Thursday, I think, is an example that there's going to be a number of different other people like that are curious about the industry and see what it's going to pop up over there.
Yeah, and there's not just the advantage of creating jobs. There's all sorts of economic development and economic potential that is derived from this. So states are now starting to understand the economic potential of cannabis. They're embracing it, and they're deploying it. And now the question is, will they mess it up when they deploy it and then have to take years and years and years to fix it, or will they deploy the program successfully out of the gate? That's the big question. And there hasn't been any one state quite yet that's got it right.
Okay, I was reading reports. So New York, we now don't open up really till autumn. It's just kind of all the planning and acquisitions going on at the moment. But New Jersey opened up, and I see that there was no supply chain issue. There didn't seem to have gone off with a hitch. Is there more information that we aren't being able to read in the media?
Well, yeah. So I've taken a different approach to analyzing these new market deployments, and I look at it from a supply perspective, because it seems every state that deploys a new program runs into a supply chain hiccup, be it from testing, from growing, from retail access and the like. And so I've been really looking at it from a supply perspective, and I've got an assessment of the entire production of the United States. I've done it by state and by illicit and legal and indoor and outdoor and greenhouse. And it doesn't surprise me that New Jersey was running into some supply chain issues. They just don't have enough growing capacity to meet the growing demand. And this will continue for, up until the point that they actually add more growers to the system. Same thing is going on in New York. In New York, they don't have enough growers, and so they're reaching out to the hemp growers in the state in order to backfill some of the supply gaps. There's another opportunity to invoke and implement interstate commerce, because there's an excess of supply in California and Oregon on the West Coast. They could easily handle the demand on the East Coast, and there's potential agreements in place, but there hasn't been anything consummated quite yet.
Okay, very interesting. One of the stats I've been looking over recently, and I'm sure you're a man who loves the statistic as much as I do, the European versus North American market. So we see that basically there's a lot of money being made from California. New York looks like it's going to be a big market. So the general size of the North American market, it says at the moment, statistic-wise, is 368 million, covers Canada, the US, and a couple of other smaller territories. Do you see the North American companies already starting to pivot towards Europe? Because from statistic, it's 747 million in Europe versus the stats that we have over in North America. Do you end up seeing Europe as being the kind of holy grail for a lot of these companies in North America anyway, or is the North American market always going to be able to dominate just in terms of retail sales?
Yeah, I just started. Well, I've got a forecast, the total addressable forecast for every country in the world, and Europe is the fourth largest market by consumer. Asia and Africa outpace North America and Europe,
Yeah.
but they just haven't deployed any legal programs. But from a dollar perspective, Europe is the second largest market because they've deployed medical programs throughout. Now you've got the emergence of adult use in Germany and Switzerland, and now they're talking about it in France and Italy and elsewhere. So yeah, there are some pivots going on. The Canadians, for example, they are looking for new markets because they have excess supply as well, and so they're looking into forming agreements into the European market and elsewhere. But it seems like everybody and their cousin is looking at the European market for their salvation because the US market hasn't opened up quite yet. And so everybody is pointing their supply, the Canadians, the Asians, Africans, South Americans, they're all gearing up, getting EU GMP certified, for example, GAP certified, and they're all targeting their supply towards Europe. And I think that if I were to give advice, which I have to suppliers on other continents, I would say be very careful about entering into the European market from a business perspective, because you may see a collapse in pricing once all that supply hits the market. And so it's up to the regulators in each individual country to modulate the supply that comes in. Otherwise, it could really impact the domestic producers and operators in those countries.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the companies seem to misunderstand the amount of people who are over in Europe who are ready to kind of be able to be cultivating and will have operations, grow operations themselves. And I think Europe, of all the territories, will have that premium flower price, I think, set in Europe, and it won't be about a race to the bottom in terms of, well, I can buy X amount of ounces for Y amount of euros. It's going to be, have you tasted this? It'll be like a wine category or like a food category where people are willing to pay that little bit more for a premium product.
Yeah, that's, once again, just like in the United States, there hasn't been a successful deployment out of the gate. It's going to take a while for the European countries to get their legs. But I do know that the policies that I've seen are protectionist policies, which is appropriate to protect the domestic market. So they favor the local domestic suppliers and operators and cultivators. And then they'll use the foreign suppliers as burst capacity in case there's more demand that comes in than supply available from the domestic basis. So yeah, I agree that there's going to be a good market in Europe, and I'm actually going to be speaking in Germany about this in July at a conference in Berlin.
And we're going to be attending that. We're going to be actually interviewing a couple of people. Alex has, we're going to be talking to Alex when we're over there as well. So we might be able to do a little quick interview during the summer when we're over there.
Oh, I'd love that. I'd be delighted to see you in person. And then in addition, I'll be speaking at the United Nations on May 5th. I'll just miss you in New York. And so we're talking about cannabis economics, and mainly from an environmental sustainability, social equity, and in a corporate governance perspective. But yeah, so there's a lot happening in the cannabis space these days.
A lot happening indeed, there is. I know you're a very busy man today, so I'm going to thank you for your time. We're just coming up on time anyway. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. For anybody who wants to know more about Whitney Economics, there's the website below. I'd highly recommend everybody brushing up their skill set and going and checking out Beau's site, because it's very informative indeed. Beau, thank you very much, mate, and have a great day.
Yeah, it's a pleasure speaking with you again. Hope to see you in person in July.
In person,
yep,
yeah. Big time. Bye-bye.